Ultimately, like, we're all in this together, so like let's
put out some good music.
Yeah.
It's always the bottom line,
let's work
right?
together.
Hey! Jess here. I'm in Boulder, Colorado at Airshow Mastering, and I'm going to be talking with Senior Mastering Engineer Anna Frick. There she is! I found her. So you are a mastering engineer.
Yep.
What does that mean to you?
It means I'm preparing your album to be launched into the marketplace. So making sure it's loud enough to compete, making sure it's going to sound good on any system you put it on, whether it's your earbuds, your car stereo, your home stereo, whatever. Making sure it sounds within its genre. And then making sure all the metadata looks good, so that your name isn't spelled wrong. The track titles are correct, and all that kind of little stuff as well.
1, 2, 3, 4. You got a shoddy body and the years of abuse have caught up to you.
My workflow is kind of deal with problems, look at EQ, look at feel, compression. Once I kind of get the feel and have all the issues addressed, then loudness is kind of like the last thing I go for, and then I start kind of looking. I know where I want to go loudness-wise, and so I'll kind of gain stage towards that. But like then there's a final check at the end of like, is this where I want it to be loudness-wise? All right, so I've got a mix here. This is In Transit by Mark Lavengood. This was recorded out on the East Coast and mixed out there by Sam Cassier. Just listen to the mix here.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So right now I'm just taking a listen to the mix and figuring out what problems might exist. The first thing I'm noticing is that the vocals are very, the lead vocals are pretty spread in the stereo field. So there are several different things I can do to try and bring a little more focus to the vocals there. I can actually adjust the stereo width using my transfer console here. I can also use some mid-side processing.
Okay.
And I've got couple of different things outboard that I can do mid-side on, and then I've got a host of plugins that are mid-side capable.
Okay.
So I did a touch of EQ on the Pultex here. In mid-side mode, just to kind of push those vocals out on the mix just a little bit. Just a little extra clarity there.
Playback. You have these little tiny Bluetooth speakers. Do you have to think about that kind of thing when you're mastering? Like knowing that it's going to come out of a circular, weird little speaker that everyone seems to have in their household?
Yeah, I mean, it is something to consider. I think the loudness normalization that's happening on streaming services is doing a world of good for making my job a little bit easier in terms of catering to those kind of services.
Okay.
Because when it's coming out of an Alexa or something, it's coming from, probably Amazon Music. So it's streaming. So as long as I'm keeping streaming in mind, if I kind of aim for something in the center of where everything is, Apple Music is down at -16 LUFS, and some of the others are, higher than that. So if I'm aiming for somewhere kind of in the middle, then I think I'm doing the best I can.
We worked on a project together that ended up on cassette.
Yeah.
You mastered a couple of my mixes.
Which worked great, by the way.
Thank you. Cassette's kind of a thing right now.
Yeah.
As is vinyl.
Kind of, yeah.
Well,
cassette, not so much.
Maybe in Brooklyn.
Okay, yeah.
When you're mastering for vinyl versus cassette, do you approach it differently?
There's different approaches to it for sure. I think if I can get as much information about all the formats that are going to be released, before I start on a project, then I kind of keep all of those in mind so I can kind of work towards all of them in general, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if I know that a project is going to go to vinyl, I'm going to approach the CD master a little bit differently because I want to make sure there's a similarity there. So I try to kind of generalize, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And other mastering engineers have different
methods.
Yeah, different methods, but that's kind of where I go. So the other thing I'm listening that I'm hearing is that there's a little buildup in the lower mids, and I think if I try to create a little bit more drive on the low end, it's going to give a little more energy to the song altogether, and also clear up that
Really? So by
conflict.
driving the lower end, you're fixing your mid?
Well, when I say drive, I'm actually using a little compression to create some energy. So a quick little release on there to actually create a little more snap on the low end.
Cool.
And that's something that I think a lot of people use compression as a way to get loudness. I use it more as a way to create a vibe. And almost more like an EQ. So I don't slam a compressor hardly ever. I get my levels in other ways. So compression is not just for loudness.
Compression is not just for loudness. I'm putting that on a t-shirt. How do you feel about AI platforms that master?
Yeah.
Or instant mastering, I believe, is what it's called. For a fraction of the price, get professional mastering.
Less than a fraction of the price.
Yeah. Yeah, so how do you feel about that?
I mean, I think it kind of speaks to where you're at in your career to a certain extent. If that's all you can afford, then, go right ahead. When you're ready to take your career to the next level, then you can seek out professional mastering. Because the difference is clear to me, but at the same time, I think there's a place for AI mastering. I think it, especially when it comes to like reference mixes and that kind of thing. I think it's great for that kind of use. But in terms of actually competing in the marketplace, really, you can't have a conversation with an algorithm, but you can have a conversation with a mastering engineer. You'll see me, I'm kind of dialing back and forth on where I'm listening at. Mm-hmm. I'll usually listen a little louder as I get everything dialed in, and then I'll dial it back to where I am comfortable listening and where I can kind of gauge overall loudness. I'm also looking at inside up there, which is giving me the LUFS rating or metering up there. So that's ultimately my gauge on everything. And then I've got the VUs up here that are telling me things, and then the digital meters here. Mm-hmm. So I've got a whole bunch of different ways of, oh, hey Lola.
Hi girl.
To gauge where I'm at.
Okay.
And then sometimes I'll compare a couple of different compressors. So I'll get the settings just about, as equal as you can get.
Yeah.
Using different compressors. So I think I like that compressor a little bit better because I like the way it's treating the vocals. It's giving a little bit, there's a little airier quality to them, whereas the Fairman that I was comparing the 2500 against was, it was just dulling it down a little bit more than I want, but I did like the way it was treating the kick. So I could mess with the settings, but I actually really like where I've got the settings on the 2500 right now. So I think I'm going to stick with that. Yeah, so there's a lot of tools in the toolkit. It's just knowing which ones to use and in which cases, and trying them out in tandem to see which one is going to give you the result you're looking for.
How do you know when your master is finished?
See, this is why I don't do mixing. Because mixing, I think you could constantly tweak.
Oh boy. Yes.
I would never know when a mix is done. Like, every mix I've done, I'm like, I could do more.
Yeah.
Or I could have done less, you know?
You know what, turns out my second mix was the best out of 20 mixes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so with mastering, how do you know when you're like, yep, ready to go?
You know, I think, you know, it comes back to the conversation with the client, you know. So when I'm tweaking, I find that when I get too far into it, if I'm spending too much time on it, I have to take a step back.
Yeah.
You know, I come outside here and take a little ear break and,
Yeah.
you know, or work on something else for a minute and then go back to it. I always, not always, but when I'm really, really struggling with something, I'll listen to it in my car, which I call the self-doubt mobile.
Self-doubt.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then, you know, as I come out of the studio, I get in my car and I listen to it. And on my drive home, I'm thinking, man, I really screwed this up. You know, like this just sounds terrible. Why didn't I do this? Or why didn't I do that? And the next morning I come back, you know, I get in my car and head to the studio and I'm listening to it and I'm thinking, it's actually not that bad. So I just need to like take a step back sometimes and, you know, listen to something else or really just kind of get out of the kind of tunnel vision I get into. I kind of set a goal, you know, when I listen to the mix for a little bit, you know, and kind of sit with it and kind of identify any problems, you know, and then I address those problems and then, you know, I kind of work on feel and like what I'm going for, but I have that kind of vision in mind once I kind of understand a mix. And so once I hit that vision, you know, then I kind of say, this is where I want it to be.